You're sitting in the dark. It's tens of thousands of years ago, and the world is a genuinely terrifying place to be a human being. There are predators in the shadows. There is hunger that never fully goes away. There is cold and pain and the constant low hum of fear that comes with being a soft, slow animal in a world full of things that want to eat you. And then, one day, you eat a strange mushroom you found growing on a pile of animal dung. Or you chew a bitter leaf. Or you breathe the smoke of a burning plant. And suddenly, the world cracks open. The walls of reality bend. Colors get louder. You feel connected to something vast and invisible. And for the first time in your life, the fear goes quiet, and something else rushes in to take its place. This is the story of the first time humans deliberately altered their own minds. Not to survive, not to eat, not to reproduce, but simply to escape the relentless weight of being conscious. And here is the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. This impulse, the drive to change how reality feels, might be one of the oldest and most fundamental things about our species. It might even be part of what made us human in the first place. Let's start with a simple, uncomfortable truth. The desire to alter your own consciousness is not a modern problem. It is not a symptom of a broken society, or bad parenting, or the pressures of the internet age. It is ancient, it is everywhere, and it appears in virtually every human culture that has ever been studied, no matter how isolated. When anthropologists went looking, they found the same thing again and again. On every inhabited continent, across cultures that had never had any contact with each other, humans had independently discovered ways to get out of their own heads. Fermented drinks in one place, psychedelic mushrooms in another, chewed coca leaves in the mountains, smoked or eaten cannabis across Asia, the opium poppy in the Mediterranean, peyote and ayahuasca in the Americas. Different plants, different methods, but the same underlying drive, showing up over and over, completely independently. When a behavior is that universal, that persistent, and that independent across cultures, scientists start to suspect it isn't a bug. It's a feature. There's actually a name for this idea. The psychopharmacologist Ronald Siegel argued that the pursuit of intoxication is a fourth basic drive, sitting right alongside hunger, thirst, and the drive to reproduce. In other words, the desire to alter your consciousness might be wired into us at the same deep level as the desire to eat. And it's not even unique to humans. Across the animal kingdom, creatures deliberately seek out substances that alter their minds. We've talked before about elephants and fermented fruit and reindeer eating strange mushrooms. Cats lose their minds over catnip. Dolphins have been observed passing around pufferfish, which release a defensive toxin and then floating in what looks a lot like a blissed-out trance. The drive to feel different appears to be woven into life itself. But humans took it further than any other animal because humans could do something no other creature could. We could remember, we could plan, and we could pass knowledge down. So when did it actually start? The honest answer is that we will probably never know the exact moment because the earliest drug use left almost no trace. A chewed leaf rots, a eaten mushroom vanishes. The knowledge lived in memory and ritual, not in stone. But the archaeological clues we do have push the timeline back further than most people would guess. Let's talk about the plants, because before there were labs and chemists, there was just the natural world, absolutely full of chemicals that mess with the human brain. And our ancestors, over countless generations of trial and error, found nearly all of them. Consider the humble mushroom. Certain species contain psilocybin, a compound that produces profound alterations in perception and thought. These mushrooms grow across much of the world, often in exactly the kinds of places early humans spent their time, near animals, near dung, in forests and grasslands. It is almost impossible to imagine that hungry, curious, foraging humans didn't eat them again and again for hundreds of thousands of years. And when they did, they would have experienced something utterly beyond their understanding. And when we go looking for hard physical evidence, the timeline stretches back further than most people expect. In a cave in South America, archaeologists found ancient bundles and pouches, thousands of years old, containing traces of multiple powerful psychoactive plants, along with the tools to prepare and consume them. In the mountains of Central Asia, scholars found wooden braziers and heated stones bearing the chemical residue of cannabis with unusually high potency, placed in ritual burials. In Southeast Asia and the Pacific, people have chewed the mildly stimulating betel nut for thousands of years, and the stained teeth of ancient skeletons still carry the evidence. Ephedra, a natural stimulant, has been found placed in graves tens of thousands of years old, though whether it was used as a drug or a medicine we can't be sure. Opium poppy seeds and residue turn up at Neolithic settlements across Europe. And in more recent times, scientists have even tested the hair of preserved ancient mummies and found the chemical fingerprints of the drugs those people consumed in life, locking their habits into the historical record for us to read thousands of years later. Every time researchers develop a more sensitive way to detect these substances, they find them further back in time and in more places than before. The pattern is always the same. Wherever we look closely enough, humans were already there, already experimenting, already reaching for the plants that change their minds. And that raises a genuinely mind-bending possibility about our own origins. There is even a controversial theory, sometimes called the stoned ape hypothesis, proposed by Terence McKenna, which suggests that the consumption of psychedelic mushrooms may have played a role in the rapid development of the human brain and the emergence of language, art, and religion. Now, to be clear, mainstream science does not accept this theory. There's no solid evidence for it, and most researchers consider it speculative at best. But even the fact that it can be seriously discussed tells you something about how deeply psychedelics may be tangled up with the human story. Because here's what we do know. The very first evidence of human religion, of art, of symbolic thinking, coincides with a period when our ancestors were almost certainly encountering psychoactive plants constantly. The oldest cave paintings, some of them, feature strange geometric patterns, the exact kinds of visual patterns that people report seeing during altered states of consciousness. Some researchers believe these caves weren't just art galleries. They may have been sacred spaces, places where shamans entered trance states and painted what they saw. Whether or not drugs caused those visions, it's hard to deny the connection between altered states and the birth of human spirituality. Because in almost every ancient culture, the person who used mind-altering substances wasn't a criminal or an addict. They were a priest. This is the part that gets completely lost in the modern conversation about drugs. For most of human history, altering your consciousness was not recreational. It was sacred. It was the primary technology humans had for reaching what they believed was the spirit world. Think about it from their perspective. You eat a certain plant, and suddenly you are having overwhelming visions. You see things that aren't there. You feel a presence larger than yourself. You come back changed, sometimes with insights, sometimes with a sense of having spoken to gods or ancestors or the dead. If you had no concept of brain chemistry, no idea what a neurotransmitter was, what would you conclude? You would conclude that this plant was a doorway, a sacred key, a gift from the divine that let you step temporarily out of the ordinary world and into a hidden one. And so, across the planet, these substances became the center of religious life. In the Americas, peyote and psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca were used in profound spiritual ceremonies that still exist today. Ayahuasca, a brew made from combining two specific plants, is especially remarkable because getting it to work requires combining ingredients in a way that seems almost impossible to have discovered by accident. Out of tens of thousands of plants in the Amazon, indigenous peoples found the exact two that, when combined, produce a powerful psychedelic experience. When asked how they figured it out, many traditional shamans give an answer that stops scientists cold. They say the plants told them. In ancient Greece, there were the Eleusinian mysteries, a secret religious rite that lasted for nearly 2,000 years. Participants would drink a special potion called kykeon and undergo a profound, life-altering experience. Many scholars now believe that potion contained a psychoactive compound, possibly derived from a fungus, meaning that some of the most celebrated minds of the ancient world, possibly including Plato himself, may have had their worldviews shaped by a psychedelic ritual. Across the ancient Near East and Asia, cannabis was burned and consumed in religious and medical contexts for thousands of years. The opium poppy was cultivated as far back as the Neolithic period, valued both for pain relief and for the dreamy escape it offered. In the high Andes, the coca leaf was, and still is, chewed to fight fatigue, hunger, and the thin mountain air, a sacred plant woven into the fabric of daily life for thousands of years. The pattern is unmistakable. Wherever humans lived, they found the local mind-altering plants, and they built meaning around them. Now let's ask the harder question. Why? Why is this drive so deep? Why would evolution wire us to seek out experiences that, on the surface, seem to offer no survival benefit and often carry real risk? There are a few possibilities, and they might all be true at once. The first is escape, plain and simple. Being a conscious human is hard. We are the only animal that knows, with total certainty, that it is going to die. We carry anxieties about the future, regrets about the past, and a constant awareness of our own fragile existence. That is an enormous psychological burden, and it is possible that the ability to temporarily switch it off, to get relief from the relentless machinery of self-awareness, was genuinely valuable. A mind that can never rest, never escape itself, might break. A mind that can occasionally step outside its own walls might endure. The second possibility is connection. Many of these substances, especially when used in group rituals, create powerful feelings of unity and belonging. When a whole community undergoes an altered experience together, it binds them. It creates trust, shared meaning, a sense of being part of something bigger. For a species whose survival depended entirely on cooperation, anything that strengthened the bonds of the group had real value. The shared trance, the communal ceremony, the collective vision, these may have been social technologies as important as language itself. The third possibility is the most fascinating and the most speculative. Insight. People who undergo profound altered states often report returning with new perspectives, creative breakthroughs, and solutions to problems that had seemed impossible. Modern research into psychedelics is beginning to take this seriously, studying how these substances can loosen rigid patterns of thinking and allow the brain to form new connections. It's possible that for our ancestors, these experiences weren't just escape or bonding. They may have been a genuine source of innovation, a way of shaking the mind loose from its ordinary grooves and seeing the world in a new way. Imagine a prehistoric human, stuck on a problem, who enters a trance and comes back with a new idea. Over enough generations, that could matter. And here's a question that sits underneath all of this and rarely gets asked. Why does the natural world contain so many chemicals that so precisely alter the human mind? It seems almost too convenient. The answer is one of the strangest coincidences in all of biology. These plants did not evolve their psychoactive compounds for us. They evolved them as weapons. A plant can't run away from the insects and animals trying to eat it. So over millions of years, many plants developed powerful chemical defenses, compounds designed to poison, disorient, or repel the creatures munching on them. Nicotine, caffeine, morphine, mescaline, these are, in the plant's own story, pesticides and deterrents. They were never meant to be enjoyed. So why do they affect us so profoundly? Because, by pure evolutionary accident, the shape of these plant chemicals happens to fit the locks in our own brains. Your brain runs on chemical messengers that bind to specific receptors, like keys fitting into locks. And it turns out that some of these plant compounds are shaped just similarly enough to slip into those same locks and turn them. Your brain has receptors for compounds found in the opium poppy, not because you evolved to use opium, but because your body produces its own natural painkillers that happen to share a similar shape. Your brain has a whole system that responds to the active ingredient in cannabis, not because of cannabis, but because you make your own internal versions. In other words, when an ancient human first ate one of these plants, their brain wasn't confused. The chemical fit. The lock turned. And a door opened that the plant never intended to open. It is one of the great accidents of life on Earth. A plant evolved a poison to survive, and a curious primate discovered that, in the right dose, that poison was a key to another world. But of course, there is a shadow side to all of this, and we can't ignore it. The same substances that offered escape, connection, and insight could also destroy. Addiction is not a modern invention. The opium poppy, so valued for pain and pleasure, also enslaved the people who came to depend on it. Any substance powerful enough to change your reality is powerful enough to trap you in it. And this is exactly why, in most traditional cultures, these substances were treated with such intense caution and ritual. They were not casual. They were not everyday. They were surrounded by rules, ceremonies, guides, and restrictions, precisely because the people who used them understood that they were playing with fire. The shaman who guided an ayahuasca ceremony spent years learning how to do it safely. The plants were respected because they were dangerous. It was only much later, when these powerful substances were stripped of their ritual context, mass-produced, concentrated, and sold as products, that they became truly destructive on a massive scale. The problem was never simply that humans altered their minds. Humans have always done that. The problem came when we took something sacred and powerful and turned it into something cheap and constant. So, when did ancient humans start using drugs to escape reality? The answer is that they were doing it before they were even fully modern humans. Before agriculture, before cities, before writing, before recorded history of any kind. The drive to alter consciousness is woven into us at a level so deep that it shows up in every culture, echoes across the animal kingdom, and may be tangled up with the very origins of religion, art, and the human mind itself. We did not invent the desire to escape reality. We inherited it, the same way we inherited hunger and thirst and love. It is not a flaw in human nature. It is human nature. And there is something oddly beautiful in that. For all our technology and sophistication, we are still the same creatures who sat in the dark tens of thousands of years ago, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of being alive, and reached for something, anything, that could open a window and let us glimpse a world beyond the walls of our own minds. We are still, all of us, looking for a way out and a way through. So the next time you hear someone talk about the human urge to escape, to alter, to transcend, remember that you're not looking at a modern weakness. You're looking at one of the oldest, deepest, and most stubbornly human impulses there is. It sat with us around the first fires, and it has never once let go.